What would your life actually be like if you lived as a Viking? The answer might surprise you. When we picture Vikings, we often see fierce warriors swinging axes and sailing off to raid distant shores. But archaeological evidence shows this image covers only a tiny slice of real Viking life. Most Viking men and women never raided anyone. They spent their days doing something far less dramatic, but absolutely essential: farming. Archaeological excavations across Scandinavia reveal that most Vikings were farmers first and foremost. They grew barley, oats, and rye in small fields cleared from forests. They raised cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats for meat, milk, and wool. During the short northern growing season, Viking farmers worked long hours to produce enough food to survive the harsh winters. Farm tools like iron plowshares, sickles, and hoes are among the most common items found at Viking sites, far outnumbering weapons. A typical Viking day started early. As the sun rose, family members divided the day's tasks. Men might plow fields, repair fences, or fish. Women typically milked cows, made cheese, and tended vegetable gardens. Children helped with simpler tasks like gathering eggs or herding animals. During harvest time, everyone worked together to bring in crops before bad weather threatened. The rhythm of farm life followed the seasons, with planting in spring, growing in summer, harvesting in fall, and indoor work during winter. Viking homes were nothing like the rough, primitive dwellings we often imagine. The typical Viking house was a longhouse, a rectangular building with curved walls that could be quite large. Archaeological remains at sites like Borg in Norway show longhouses reaching up to 270 feet in length. Most family farms had more modest homes around 50 to 75 feet long. These longhouses were remarkably sophisticated structures built to handle the harsh northern climate. Inside a typical longhouse, the single large room served multiple functions. The central area contained a long hearth that provided both cooking fire and heat. Smoke escaped through a hole in the roof, though the houses were often smoky. Wooden posts supported the roof, and the walls were made from wooden planks or wattle and daub, a mixture of sticks and clay. In colder regions, walls could be insulated with turf, providing excellent protection against winter temperatures. Benches lined the walls of the longhouse, serving as seating during the day and sleeping areas at night. People slept on straw mattresses covered with furs and woven blankets. Valuable items and personal possessions were stored in wooden chests that also served as seats. Archaeology shows that many longhouses had slightly raised areas at the ends that might have offered more private spaces for the family leaders or served as storage areas. The entire family lived together in this single space with livestock, sometimes sharing the house during harsh winter months. Imagine the sounds and smells of a Viking home: the crackling fire, cooking food, talking people, and occasionally farm animals at one end of the building. This arrangement provided warmth and security, but very little privacy by modern standards. Viking food was simple, but varied. Barley porridge served as a daily staple, often flavored with fruits, nuts, or honey when available. Bread made from barley or rye was baked on flat stones near the fire. Dairy products played a major role in the diet, with milk from cows, sheep, and goats used to make cheese, butter, and skyr, a yogurt-like food still eaten in Iceland today. Meat wasn't eaten daily, but appeared more often in winter when animals were slaughtered to avoid feeding them through the cold months. Fish provided an important protein source, especially for coastal communities. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings ate cod, herring, salmon, and shellfish. They preserved fish by drying, smoking, or fermenting it. Hunting contributed venison, wild boar, and smaller game to their tables. Vegetables came from small garden plots where they grew onions, cabbage, peas, and beans. Wild foods like berries, nuts, mushrooms, and herbs rounded out their diet and added flavor to meals. Viking clothing was far more colorful and complex than the drab furs often shown in movies. Archaeological finds and grave goods show that Vikings wore woolen garments in various colors: reds, blues, greens, and yellows produced from natural dyes. Men typically wore trousers and a tunic belted at the waist. while women wore long dresses with apron-like overdresses fastened with decorative brooches. Both men and women wore cloaks for warmth, secured with pins or brooches. Shoes and boots were made from leather, carefully stitched together. The long winter months provided time for indoor work and entertainment. Women spun wool into thread and woven cloth on upright looms. Men carved wood, worked on tools, and repaired equipment. These dark winters were brightened by games, music, and storytelling. Archaeological sites have yielded game pieces for Nafatiful, a chess-like board game, and dice made from bone or antler. People played musical instruments like simple flutes, lyres, and drums. Storytelling formed a central part of Viking entertainment. The great Norse sagas and tales of gods and heroes were shared orally long before they were written down. Imagine sitting by the central hearth as a skilled storyteller recounts tales of Thor's battles with giants or Odin's quest for wisdom. These stories weren't just entertainment. They taught cultural values and reinforced community bonds during the isolated winter months. Social structure in Viking communities was less rigid than in many other medieval societies. While there were social classes, there was no strict feudal system like elsewhere in Europe. At the top stood wealthy landowners and chieftains who gained power through a combination of land, ownership, family connections, and personal reputation. Below them were free farmers who owned their own land and made up the majority of the population. Lower still were tenant farmers who worked land belonging to others. At the bottom were thralls, slaves captured in raids or born into slavery. Community decisions were made at things, assemblies where free men gathered to resolve disputes, establish laws, and make important decisions. These gatherings served as courts, parliaments, and social events all at once. The Thing system shows that despite having kings and chieftains, Viking society maintained elements of democracy and community participation unusual for the time. What was daily life actually like in a Viking settlement? Most Vikings were farmers living in family groups in longhouses, focused on agriculture, crafts, and trade rather than constant warfare. Their days followed the rhythm of the seasons, with periods of intense farm work alternating with indoor crafts and social activities. Far from the one-dimensional raiders of popular imagination, Vikings created stable communities with complex social structures and rich cultural traditions. The image of the farmer might be less dramatic than the warrior, but it's much closer to the reality most Vikings experienced throughout their lives.